Good afternoon, everybody. This is Charles Felix with South Florida Hospital News and Healthcare Report. In our continuing series of CEO and leadership videos in healthcare, today we're taking a twist and turn to a company that is doing some amazing research and has developed products for the hearing impaired. So, with that, I'm going to introduce Brent Lucas, who's the CEO of Envoy Medical. Brent, how are you?
I'm good, Charles. How are you?
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, the position with the company, kind of educational background, and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. I'd love to. So my name is Brent Lucas. I am the CEO of Envoy Medical and have been the CEO since 2015, but I've been working at the company in one form or another since 2007. My journey actually even goes further back when my father and mother first invested in what was then St. Croix Medical in 1995. So this is Envoy Medical is really the culmination. Where we are today is really the culmination of about 3 decades of work by a lot of great people and a lot of grace from a lot of very patient investors. But I became the CEO in 2015. At that point, we were between products. We were trying to decide what we were going to do with our first product, which is the Esteem device. And we decided to pivot to a fully implanted cochlear implant, which we are calling the Acclaim. It's now investigational in some studies, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later.
Mhm.
I'm a lawyer by training, so I went to law school. I always had an interest in the sciences, so kind of brought it all together in a medical device company and the opportunity to lead.
Oh, great. So you've spent a lot of your career with the company. Uh,
Yes, yes.
and I was reading a little bit about the company online, very fascinating. So tell us about how the Esteem product came to being, because within the industry, hearing is one of those things I think that is overlooked a lot. And it's important to make sure you have a company that's doing the right thing. So tell us about the Esteem product.
Sure. So the Esteem is our first product. That is what we call a fully implanted active middle ear implant. And it is to this day is the only FDA approved fully implanted active middle ear implant. So it's a really new category of hearing implants. The idea actually came from an audiologist or a hearing aid dispenser in the 70s, actually, to not have a microphone or a speaker on the outside of your head. Instead, his idea was to take the ear as it's designed and use that to pick up the sound, which then reduces things like the occlusion effect of hearing aids. So occlusion effect is if you have something in your ear, it sounds like something's being blocked. That's called the occlusion effect. And hearing aids actually have to overcome that with additional programming and design. Then you also have microphones and speakers that sometimes have audible feedback. If you can remember hugging your grandmother or a loved one when they were younger, and sometimes their hearing aid would start to squeal. So
Mm-hmm.
the idea was to use the ear so we could benefit from our natural biology and pick up the sound. So the idea actually, I talked about the company being founded in 1995. The idea actually started in the 70s. And this is a very unique transformational idea to use the ear to pick up sound rather than a microphone. So the Esteem took that. We got FDA approval for that product in 2010 and was on the market for a while, but we ran into some commercial struggles because it's not covered by insurance, in part because it is a brand new category. And CMS just wants to lump us in with hearing aids. So we have struggled commercially with that product, and that is part of why the company then pivoted to the Acclaim device, which is a fully implanted cochlear implant, which uses that same sensor to pick up sound, and the idea of using your ear, and then we'll use the back end is more familiar to a traditional cochlear implant.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, but the Esteem is still available for those people who want to be able to use it there.
Yes, the Esteem is still available, and we are working on ways of getting it covered by insurance. Since I took over in 2015, we've made some great strides in what we're going to do in that regard. But the Esteem is available. There's a surgeon in Jupiter, Florida, that does the Esteem, Dr. John Lee. There's surgeons kind of sporadically throughout the country that still believe in the product, even though it's not covered by insurance and would be happy to put it in. It's just the financial commitment for a patient, if something like this is not covered, is sometimes a hindrance.
Mhm. So tell us about the acclaim then. So the implanted acclaim.
The Acclaim is, as I mentioned, a fully implanted cochlear implant. So if you're not familiar with what a cochlear implant
Right.
is, it is electrical stimulation of the hearing nerve. So at a certain point in your hearing loss journey, your cochlea, which is fluid filled and has hearing hair cells in it, your cochlea, enough of those hair cells have died off that you actually can't pick up any more information. So at that point, a cochlear implant electrically stimulates the cochlea, and that information is then taken to the brain via the hearing nerve. And so the Acclaim is a breakthrough technology, and I can say that because the FDA actually designated us as a breakthrough device. It is a breakthrough technology in that there will no longer be anything on the outside of the head. So you might be familiar, your listeners might be familiar with a traditional cochlear implant has a very large thing on the outside of the head, and then typically has a
Right.
magnet connected. Ours won't have anything on the outside of your head whatsoever. Everything will be fully internal. And so we really believe that will have a lot of benefits for patients and look forward to studying that more in our pivotal study.
Now, will something like that also not be covered by insurance too, or?
It's our expectation that the cochlear implant will be covered because cochlear implants are already covered.
Oh, okay.
Cochlear implants, the nice thing about the cochlear implant industry is that there was a lot of hard work done by patient organizations, advocacy initiatives in the 90s and early 2000s, in which they said, look, this is really a transformational technology for these people, CMS, and you should not cover it. You should not call it a hearing aid. So they used to not be covered because CMS called them a hearing aid.
Hmm.
That no longer is the case. They are covered. And there's actually a national coverage determination that says that all the CMS MACs have to cover it. So cochlear implants are a different story when it comes to insurance. And if I could look back 30 years and I was the CEO in 1995, the first product I would have gone after is the cochlear implant. That
Hmm.
made the most sense. And then potentially we could have gone to the middle ear implant after.
So why would somebody want the acclaim? We'll stick with that. That obviously has a little bit more legs to it because it is covered by insurance.
Correct.
Versus, as one might say, what I would call the standard hearing aid product that goes around the ear and kind of goes in the ear. Or do you have to qualify for something like that?
So a cochlear implant is for a different set of clinical indications than a traditional hearing aid. So a traditional hearing aid is for people who have mild to severe hearing loss. And quite frankly, their sweet spot is in the mild to moderate range. When you start to get into that severe range of hearing loss, you have so much damage to your cochlea that just making the sounds louder doesn't do you much.
Mhm.
So what you need to do is electrically stimulate that hearing nerve via the hearing cells that are left, and that allows you to get more information to the brain. So typically on a person's hearing loss journey, many people are going to start losing their hearing and it's sort of annoying. Then they get to a point where they notice it. They start missing words in conversations. Loved ones start telling them, you're not hearing what I'm saying. At that point, that's where a hearing aid is probably good enough for you.
Mhm.
Then you're going to get to a point where even with your hearing aid in, you're still missing about half of a conversation. That's when you become a cochlear implant candidate. So it's really the last step in your hearing loss journey is a cochlear implant. And typically we talk about there probably being 2 to 4 million people in the United States, or sorry, 2 to 4 million adults in the United States who could be a cochlear implant candidate, where there's probably 30 to 35 million people that would be a hearing aid candidate.
Mhm. Now, does this also work for children who have very bad hearing impaired or hearing impaired?
Our device, the Acclaim, is going to be indicated for adults, at least to start with. That's
Mhm.
our first product will be adult indications. Traditional cochlear implants from the other manufacturers, there are pediatric inclusion criteria for some of those devices. I would say, however, that when you look at the market opportunity that's available for cochlear implants, it's really the adults. So there's a certain portion of the population that is born deaf, true, but the large unpenetrated unmet need is actually in the elderly. So as people age more and more, they're progressing into that severe to profound category. That's really where the opportunity is for the cochlear implant manufacturers. You don't have to take my word for it. You can look at the investor presentations from the other companies, and they often talk about the unmet need and the underpenetrated market in the adult market.
So what kind of I guess operation does it require?
The cochlear implants all require what's called a mastoidectomy, which is just drilling out the mastoid bone to get access to the middle ear and to the cochlea. It's an outpatient procedure. A traditional cochlear implant takes 1 to 2 hours. Ours will probably take 2 to 3 because there's a couple more steps involved, but it's all outpatient procedure. Some patients say, they need a Tylenol at the end of it or an Advil. Some people require a little bit more pain management, but typically it's a very easily recovered surgery, or patients recover quite well from it.
And you were saying, so there's nothing on the outside of the ear at all? Or
Correct, for our device, and it's truly going to be different than everybody else's.
wow.
There'll be nothing on the outside. Now, I'm going to kind of put a wrinkle in here that might confuse the issue, but I think it's worth noting. Because you're using the ear, you can put an AirPod in if you want, or you could put a hearing aid on top of our device. And that's actually a very interesting opportunity for patients, because a lot of hearing aids and AirPods have very good streaming capabilities. You can take your phone calls on those devices. So the ability to be able to use your ear is going to let patients behave more, quote unquote, normally, similar to other patients that are using stethoscopes or using things like that, where they need to put things in their ear. You can't do that with a traditional cochlear implant, because a traditional cochlear implant actually picks up the sound on a microphone that's behind the ear, on that big thing behind the ear. That's where the microphone is. So if you're picking up sound from there, you can't use your ear. Our device, you can use your ear, and I think it's going to be a big deal. Plus, the fact that it's fully implanted, I didn't even mention this. You can hear at night. You can go to sleep with it. You can take a shower with it. You can jump in the lake if you'd like. These are things you cannot do with most traditional hearing devices. So it really allows the patients an opportunity, we believe, to live a sort of a more quality of life and have more freedom in what they do day to day.
Now, is the Acclaim currently available?
The Acclaim is not commercially available. It is in an early feasibility study at Mayo Clinic in Minnesota.
Okay.
And we are now progressing shortly. We have to work with the FDA, obviously, through this process, but we are headed towards a pivotal study, which I am hopeful will begin in the fourth quarter of this year. And then that study will be about 56 patients, and we'll be looking to enroll that quickly at 7 different sites. And from there, commercialization would hopefully happen at the end of 2026. A lot of things can happen, and we're going to hope COVID doesn't come back or anything like that to throw a wrinkle into this, but hopefully we're commercial by the end of 2026, or be quite confident we'd be commercial in 2027.
That's great. That's wonderful. Any other products that the company has on the market or thinking about going on the market?
Not currently, no. We have those 2 products. We were really building ourselves around a fully implanted hearing solutions. I do think there's an opportunity within the hearing industry to combine a couple of other technologies, and we'll keep our eyes open. You alluded to earlier, and I think you're absolutely correct, hearing is often overlooked. It's an invisible disability. If I have hearing loss, you don't know I have hearing loss unless I tell you, or I'm wearing something on the outside of my head. But there's an increased attention in the connection, or the correlation, I should say, between hearing loss, early cognitive decline, dementia. There's a lot of other social isolation, depression, falls that require hospital stays. So it's really one of these things that should be treated more often in our healthcare system, because you could hopefully stave off other things that become quite serious.
Yeah, in fact, while I was looking at your website, you do have that hearing test on your website, and I did take it. And I'm glad to say that I was I was above the good, just by a tad. So I was above the good. But when I said to use headphones, I don't use the traditional headphones. I use the bone headphones, the ones that don't go in the ear and behind me. And I find those very, 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 very good to use. And they don't kind of bother me with something in my ear. So But
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think that's a good observation. A lot of people do get bothered by wearing those external devices in the ear. It can be uncomfortable.
right, right. Well, anything else? Anything else, Brett? That we can talk about, or I'll tell you, why don't we plan to get together once you kind of make some moves with the acclaimed, and I'd be glad to have you back on again.
That sounds great. Yes. The only other thing I'd mention is we've been pushing for two bills in front of Congress. So we have what's called the Hearing Device Coverage Clarification Act. One is in the House and one is in the Senate. And I would encourage any of your viewers who are interested in seeing Congress move hearing health into to become more of a priority to reach out to their representatives and let them know that they should be supportive of such an initiative. And I think that would be a great thing for Florida in general and across the nation. But we have several sites within Florida, and I know there's a population within Florida that I think would really love the Esteem device.
Mm-hmm.
And with these bills, we could get coverage for such a device, and I think that would be quite important for the
Yeah,
industry.
the esteem seems like a really, really good advice, but it definitely needs to get covered by insurance, and especially
Correct.
Medicare.
Correct.
So,
Correct. Right.
well, why don't you have Katie send me some stuff on that, and let me see what we
Okay.
can do with it.
That's great.
I think it is important because, like I said earlier, and you reiterated, it is overlooked a lot. Even during annual physicals, it's overlooked.
Right. I would argue that a lot of primary care physicians don't really understand hearing loss and whether the treatment's available or the connections to other issues. So you have to be an advocate for yourself if you want to take care of it.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. Well, Brett, again, I appreciate it for you coming on. And why don't you tell us, people, with the company, anyone want to reach you, how they can reach you, and how they can reach your company.
I'd love to. Our website is Envoy Medical, ENVOY medical.com, envoymedical.com. And you can find a lot of information on there about both of our products. There's also, if you're very interested in the products and would like to know more, there's some number and contact information that can get you in touch with a dedicated team at Envoy to talk through hearing loss and the available options, whether it's our device or other people's advice. We look at ourselves as really educators of people who don't know what's out there. And then my LinkedIn page, you can find me on LinkedIn under Brent Lucas. I tend to put a lot of updates on that page a little bit faster than we do through the traditional channels. So, can reach out on there and other social media channels. Envoy Medical has a presence as well, but those will get you close enough.
That'd be great. Brett, thanks very much. And we'll see you again.
All
and
right.
This is Charles Felix, South Florida Hospital News and Healthcare Report, with another great interview with leadership in healthcare. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, Charles.